Good morning, and welcome to the Alameda Connection on KCSM HD2. I'm your host, Scott Piehler. Every week, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the best of the Bay Area's island city. From a great place to grab a drink or a bite to eat, to companies producing cutting-edge technology that leads an industry, there are so many stories to tell here in Alameda. This week, we're heading back to the cutting edge, or more precisely, the edge that doesn't cut. When you live on an island, you become keenly aware of the importance of being a good steward of the resources available to you. From a three-tiered waste sorting system, to the understanding that the best thing you can put in your front yard are native plants, to a municipal power company that sources 100% of its electricity from renewable resources, Alamedans take the environment seriously by necessity. One of the oldest and most reliable sources of green power is hydropower. Humanity has been harnessing the power of moving water for centuries, dating back to when the Industrial Revolution was fueled by riverside mill complexes that became the engines driving the economy. Hydroelectric dams are an integral part of America's energy infrastructure, but hydropower is not without its environmental concerns. Fast-moving water, fast-moving fish, and fast-moving blades can be a lethal combination for the wildlife that shares the waterways. Here in Alameda, one company is doing something about it. That company is Natel Energy. Their high-tech solutions are allowing existing hydropower installations to put in turbines that allow fish to pass through with survival rates of 100%. It's not just beneficial for the fish, it actually recaptures power that would normally be lost when turbines must be shut down during seasonal fish runs. My guest is Natel Energy co-founder and Chief Commercial Officer Gia Schneider. We discuss the technology that makes this possible and talk about the challenges and multiple rewards of being partners in the future of America's green energy. That's Gia Schneider of Natel Energy this morning on the Alameda Connection. Well, good morning, Gia, and welcome to the Alameda Connection.
Good morning, Scott. Thanks very much for having me here.
First of all, usually I save the elevator pitch to the end of the show, but let's start with the elevator pitch because Natel Energy, what exactly do you do?
We design high-performance turbines for hydropower that are able to pass fish safely directly through the turbines. The reason why that's transformative, we have a lot of hydropower that has been around for a long time. That's going through a big modernization cycle right now, which means new turbines are going into these old plants that Hoover Dam, Grand Coulee, et cetera, that have been around for decades. We have a real opportunity to take those plants, upgrade them, get more energy out, and at the same time go from maybe mortality rates that on average get to be about 20% per plant and drop those to less than 2%.
Wow.
Be a transformational impact for us from an energy perspective and transformational for fish.
Your title is one I'm actually unfamiliar with, Chief Commercial Officer. What do you do?
What I do is drive the business. So focus basically on sales. It's a little bit of maybe a fancy way to say, what I do is figure out how we work with our customers to bring our solutions to them.
So your customers primarily utilities? Who is a customer?
And customers are utilities, owners of hydropower plants. Give one example that is not currently a customer, just to be clear, but one that we are very focused on would be the Army Corps and Bonneville Power Administration up in the Pacific Northwest. Just to give you an example, from a dollars value perspective, right now, the way that downstream fish passage is handled in that system is to spill water over the spillway, over the dam, instead of putting it through the turbines so that the fish can pass downstream more safely. If we could put turbines that could pass fish safely directly through those turbines, we would get back on the order of 5 gigawatts of generation that's currently sidelined. We would deliver about $1 billion in ratepayer savings annually, because right now what Bonneville has to do is buy replacement power for the power that they're not able to generate when they're spilling. The value proposition is they're going to modernize their plants anyway because the turbines are old. Doing so is a way to, in many cases, unlock gigawatts, bring gigawatts back to the grid to deal with fish passage issues. Sure. We've done a number of things over the last couple decades that have sidelined megawatts.
Your brother is co-founder and the chief technology officer. What's the dynamic?
It's very funny. When we first started the company, I remember one investor said, you know what, guys, if y'all were like college roommates, this would be really cool. The fact that you're our siblings makes it a little weird. My brother focuses on the technology. We really, in general, work well together. I'm not going to say that there never are.
Oh, of course not.
There's always like stress and tensions in figuring out how you develop new tech, bring it to market, and scale it as a business. I think that we have very complementary skills. He's an incredible engineer. I often describe it as he's the brains. He's developed all of the solutions, and I do the sales. I'm out there, figuring out how we translate what we're doing in ways that make sense to customers, to regulators, to environmental stakeholders, to other folks who aren't our direct customers, but who have to be excited and supportive of what we're doing in order for us to be successful.
Now, your CEO, Bill Mallis, he came in from outside. What prompted bringing in an outsider?
We were getting to the point where we had de-risked the technology. So we had achieved initial installations. We've got some initial traction with customers. And we're really trying to figure out how do we start to scale more quickly within an industry that is fairly conservative. Energy in general is a pretty conservative industry. Hydro is, I would say, maybe even more so within the energy space. And Bill brought a bit of background and experience, given that he had worked in hydropower for a long time and had previously run one of the big equipment manufacturers in hydro, had run the Canadian business.
Where did the name come from?
Natural Electric.
Okay.
That's where Natel came from. Oh, man. That one goes way back. When we started the company, we obviously had to come up with a name. I had done a couple startups before that where we had, spent quite a bit of time trying to come up with names. And I think Abe and I, as we got going, we're like, we need to get going. Natel, Natural Electric. Okay. That's what we're doing. Let's go.
Well, you can feel better because I had Carrie and Mike from Semi Freddy's on, and they finally admitted that their name's a mistake. So you're doing okay.
At the end of the day, got to have a name.
Back into the 80s. Let's go deep into your history. Your dad, Dan Schneider from Texas A&M. What was his background that kind of led down this path?
Our father was what I would describe, there's this term Renaissance man, and I think he really fit that. He was a medical doctor by training. That was like his original training. He grew up on a dairy farm. You have to fix things. You have to make things work on a farm. So he had a lot of mechanical intuition. He was a sailor. He was a pilot. He had really two passions in life. One was public health, and the other was kind of energy, environment, climate change. I grew up in the early 80s having conversations with him about global warming and climate change and energy. He was very influenced by the energy crisis of the 70s. His focus was, how do we take moving water and make energy at large scale, but do so in a way that has a lighter footprint from an environmental perspective. And that just passion for him. His professional career was in public health, and this was his side gig, if you will.
Your website has one of my favorite quotes of any website in the history of websites, which is, as teens, siblings Gia and Abe discover the positive ecological benefit beaver dams can have on river health. How did that come about?
That was the result of two things. So one was that my family grew up taking an annual trip to Colorado to go fishing and camping at this spot in southern Colorado. That really was derived from the fact we liked spending out the time outdoors, and my brother is an avid fly fisherman, loved fish. Literally, I think his first words, the lore in our family was his first words were fish down there. We'd go past any body of water and be like, fish down there. So we were going to the spot in Colorado. There were two forks to the creek, and one fork was in BLM land, which was ranched, and the ranchers would pull out the beaver dams, and the other was in wilderness and was full of beaver, and the fishing was much better on the fork that had beavers. In high school, we noticed this, and my dad suggested, why don't we do some research on it? And so my brother wrote a little grant application. We sent it in to the Texas Department of Environment, I think. We got some funding, did a little research project. Fair enough. I was his research assistant collecting a bunch of bugs.
It reminded me of a story, and I forget where it was from, where a particular municipality was having problems with flood control, and there was umpteen tens of thousands suggested, and a naturalist said, chuck a couple of beavers in, and about 6 weeks later it was solved.
It's amazing. Beavers, The research that has progressed in the last decade in particular around the beneficial impacts of beaver dams and really kind of think about it as distributed structures in rivers is pretty incredible. They just by simply trapping water on the landscape for longer, slowing runoff down, you drive groundwater recharge, you create diverse ecosystems, side channel habitat. You create these refuges in wildfires. There's crazy imagery coming off of some of the wildfires where a wildfire goes through and the only green thing for miles are the beaver dams and the meadows around them. They become like, islands of refuge. They're really cool.
MIT grad. So that was 1999. Take us from MIT graduation to 2009 when the company's founded.
I was a chemical engineering major. Coming out of that, I had a choice to make. I could either go traditional chemical engineering, which was a lot of process engineering type jobs. Ultimately decided, given just my overall interest in energy, to go and work for a consulting company at that time called Accenture. They had a utility practice, so I was able to get a broad exposure to a bunch of different energy companies. Did that for a few years, joined Constellation Energy. They're a independent power producer is the technical term. On the East Coast, they were my last client at Accenture. I was part of their energy desk and then did that for a short period of time, left with a few folks to start an energy hedge fund back in 2004 when it was a very interesting period of time in commodities in the U.S. We pretty quickly got an offer to go in-house to Credit Suisse because all the banks were piling into commodities at that point in time. Did that. Helped build up the desk there, then helped wind everything down in 2007 after Lehman happened.
Okay.
Once that was all wrapped up, my brother and I said, you know what? Let's actually pick up this old idea that our father had and that we had talked a lot about and see if we could turn it into a company.
So that was 2009, the company's founded, partially with a grant from the Department of Energy. That's Barack Obama's first term. Where was the company at that point?
We were based here in the Bay Area. So we got started out here on the base in Alameda Point. We were in the old aircraft control tower. We sublet some space from McConney. They kind of incubated us, basically.
When did you begin to suspect that you were on to something?
It took some time. To be blunt, we were cash strapped for, I would say, the first 5-7 years of our existence. I would say everything really finally came together in 2019. We started moving more in that direction, but I'd say 2019 was really when we had put all the pieces together and I think had the correct technology, the right way to take that technology to market as a solution, and the right focus on the right customer. The big aha for us was to realize we can just make blades that are safer for fish and put those new blade designs on the existing types of turbines used in hydropower today. And that meant that we now had something that was an incremental improvement in many ways on the existing installed base, which is a far more straightforward path to market.
This is evolutionary rather than revolutionary.
I think we think of it as revolutionary in its impact, evolutionary in terms of what it requires owners to take on in terms of adoption.
Now, your first hydrologic tests were in Worcester, Mass. What brought you to Worcester?
One of our country's leading labs for testing fish passage was this facility called Alden Research Laboratory. That is why we went there. They had the right facility to enable us right out of the gates in 2019 to test a megawatt scale blade for strike survival with fish. That was a critical moment for us to take this realization that we've learned enough about how to make safe blade shapes. And previously we've been pretty limited in terms of the size that we were focused on, and instead say, you know what, let's go to a megawatt scale. Can we actually make this larger in terms of the megawatt output? And that enabled us to do that. We had the kind of aha moment January 2019, did the first testing, had the very, very near 100% survival results in May of 2019, got our first unit in the ground December of 2019. So it was a very, very fast movement, actually, once we kind of put all the pieces together.
How many employees do you have?
We are 28 right now.
When you are looking for people, who are you looking for to join the company, typically?
A lot of engineers. Our business is fundamentally an engineering business. So what we do is we develop new designs that are custom, basically for every single project. The way hydropower works, each project has its own characteristics of how much water is flowing. And so as a result, the turbine design is very customized. Our workflow is we do a lot of engineering design work. We do scale model testing, and then we work with existing equipment manufacturers to make the equipment. In terms of the people on our team, it's a lot of engineers, folks who are technicians doing work on the scale model test, and then, of course, the people from a sales through to external affairs. Very important part for us how we interact with regulators, policymakers,
Sure.
stakeholders, et cetera.
You did a project for Apple. What was that?
Oh, yeah, that was a project up in Oregon. Around the 2015 timeframe, they were building a data center in Prineville. All tech companies have green energy procurement objectives, so they wished to procure green energy for that project. We were working with an irrigation district in Central Oregon that had some existing drops within their irrigation canal system, and they were interested in putting hydro on those. And so it was a good fit. It was a small project, but it fit nicely in as a small part of Apple's overall strategy with respect to how they would meet their clean energy goals.
The layperson probably doesn't think about the mortality rate of fish when they're thinking about hydropower. We think, salmon ladder, and we forget about it. What is the actual problem? And then how do you address it? We've talked a little bit about blade shape, but let's kind of run through the problem and the solution.
The issue that we address is downstream passage of fish moving down the river. The reason why that's important element is because in order to maximize power generation from hydropower, the ideal objective would be to put all of the water, all of the river flow through the turbines to generate electricity. If you're doing that, probably means that everything that's in that river flow, fish, are going to go through the turbines.
Sure.
The challenge is that classic turbine design has historically optimized for very thin blades.
Okay.
Generally has optimized for units that are spinning relatively fast.
You're almost talking like a fan blade.
Correct. When you get to large machines, there's two additional issues. So one is, as you have larger machines, the tip speeds become very high. You can think about that if you're on a merry-go-round out at the edge, you're moving faster. And then the last element, which gets a little bit technical, as you have more pressure, a higher dam, for example, there's more pressure and the pressure change is greater as the water moves through the turbine, and that has pressure-related effects. The core that we focus on addressing is strike. It's, at the end of the day, mechanical injury to fish moving through the turbine. That is the issue that we address. We make it possible for fish to safely move through a turbine. We do that through a careful design of the leading edge of the blade. The basics are a very thick leading edge. The way to think about it is that thick leading edge creates a stagnation zone, which you can think of as almost like an airbag that deflects fish and debris around the blade. Then we have a forward slant of the blade as you move from hub to tip. That enables us to maintain a consistently high survival rate, whether a fish is interacting with the turbine at the tip or at the hub. If at the tip, as it slants forward, it becomes more of a glancing interaction as opposed to a direct strike. To put some practical numbers around this, and you can find this information on our website, we've published a number of peer-reviewed papers from all of our testing. We have been able to demonstrate 100% survival on eel that are as long as the turbine, the test turbine was wide, or, the diameter of the test turbine at very high speeds. We have demonstrated 100% survival at fish passing through a turbine spinning at 900 RPM on the test stand. And it is a little surreal, I will admit, even to me, even at this stage, to be on our test stand and see a turbine that is spinning way faster than the human eye can see, and to see fish go through it and come out downstream alive. It's a testament to engineering. Where we prioritize safety, we can do a ton of work as engineers.
And that blade design, is that what you call on your website the restoration hydro turbine?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the first install that you had was in Freedom, Maine, which for listeners who may not be familiar with Maine, that's about 75 miles west of Bar Harbor. Not exactly where I would expect.
I mean, it's a really cool little place. The person who led the development of that is a really awesome individual and wanted to do something with clean energy and bring something back to this town that he had grown up in. It's an old mill that now houses both this turbine that produces power for the businesses within the mill itself, and in the mill, probably the key business is the Lost Kitchen, which is this really awesome restaurant.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it's super cool.
2020, Oregon, rainbow trout test. You wound up with 100% survival rate. Did you go into it expecting anything like that?
We expected very high survival rates. That was one of our earlier tests. And so we certainly had good expectations, but not, I would say, the level of confidence that we would have today.
This is not just you claiming it. These are peer-reviewed results.
Correct. And that particular test was done in the field with researchers from Pacific Northwest National Lab. That has been a critical element of all of our field tests we have done in partnership with third parties. We take a lot of scientific care in how we design our tests. We have put a number of those test results through the peer review process.
And because my outdoorsman father is going to ask, were these stocked or native trout?
These were stocked trout. Yes, no, these were stocked trout. There's a lot of rules and regulations and permits that we have to obtain to do all of this work. So very controlled.
What is the long-term vision?
Long-term vision for Natel, and I think what motivates my brother and I and our entire team, is to be an important part of enabling hydropower, a source of renewable energy that has been with us for a century.
Right.
And hydropower has this unique characteristic where it is an electricity source that is able to provide grid balancing, grid reliability, storage, as well as just plain generation. It's such a complementary source of generation to wind, solar, etc. So our vision is, how do we help hydropower move forward and modernize in a way that also addresses one of the big challenges to hydro, which is environmental performance, particularly with respect to fish passage. We are not a silver bullet for everything, right? It's a specific focus. That's what motivates us. Success for us is seeing this solution deployed at gigawatts. The example I gave you earlier about Bonneville, being part of transforming the Pacific Northwest, helping bring thriving salmon back to the Pacific Northwest while also generating more electricity from the infrastructure that's been there now for 50 years. Like that would be awesome.
Closely related question. Alarm goes off in the morning. What gets Gia out of bed and back to work?
Well, I would say that these days it's potentially my children, one of whom tends to be an early riser. The other is simply that my entire career has focused on how do we create solutions that are at the intersection of energy, climate, water, and nature, and do so in a way that eliminates false choices. And what I mean by that is to create solutions that don't require us to say we must choose reliable, cheap electricity, and the cost of that choice is we are going to sacrifice this part of the environment.
Okay.
I'm not naive. There always are trade-offs. Life is full of difficult decisions. But I think that the more that we can, that I can, that my team can, and that we as a society can find ways to create compromises that deliver beneficial outcomes for all, that's a worthy objective. And that is that's the strongest probably thing that motivates me every day.
What is your typical day? Is there a typical day?
Yeah, I'm an early riser. I get up. I tend to be up at 4, crank in a few hours of work, then take care of the kids, get them out the door. I have a wonderful husband who is the reason I'm able to also do the amount of work that I do. And then I'm back at it and work hard until about 5 or 6, and then wrap up. It's kid time again. And then, maybe there's a little bit that happens after that. And the weekends, we try to get out, do some stuff on the water. My husband and I are both really avid water people, and the Bay Area is a wonderful place to be able to get out and do some water and wind sports.
Speaking of being avidly on the water, a previous guest we had on the show, do you ever cross paths with Liz Taylor from Deep Ocean Explorer?
Yes, occasionally. Yeah, absolutely. The community here in Alameda, and particularly on the base, I think is a really, really, it's really amazing one that has evolved and will continue to evolve, of course, but one which we feel really privileged to be a part of.
So a little business stuff for the folks who flip to the business section. Privately held?
Yes.
Are you looking to go public or no?
I doubt public is our path. We will, as the kind of company where we are funded by investors, absolutely thinking about exits are going to be at some point, I think, logical. I think it's most likely through some sort of an acquisition as opposed to necessarily an IPO.
What is an unreasonable fellowship?
Unreasonable is a program that was put together by a really cool group of folks who had some support from Barclays Bank. And that was part of an overall mission from Barclays, as they were thinking about how to engage more with venture community, with entrepreneurs, also focused around various elements of impact and sustainability. And so they created a program where they help do these little boot camps, if we will, where you basically go sit down with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, and they bring together investors, lawyers, people with experience building companies, people who have experience tackling operations issues, and they do these intensive boot camps. It's a really great way to meet a ton of interesting people and learn a lot quickly about challenges that most entrepreneurs face in terms of building companies.
You addressed what was going to be my next question in a way, because there are a lot of companies and entrepreneurs are not necessarily good people at maintaining business. They're great at starting them up, and then they hit road bumps.
Yep. So. Correct. And it's a learning journey. That is for sure. When I look back at our journey, there are absolutely things I would change. I don't like to think of it as regret. Regret is a particular emotion that I don't like to indulge because I think it's not a useful one. But I do think that there's a lot to be learned from the past. And that's one of the benefits of this program is it allowed, interacting with folks, to learn from their past experiences and figure out, some of the things we might need to do to scale and be successful.
Well, now the one question I tend to ask everybody, just for fun, you've got company coming in from out of town to Alameda, and you have to take them out to 3 different meals at 3 different restaurants in Alameda. Where are you going?
Yeah, this one's a hard one because I'm going to break your 3 rule and I'm going to give you, I'll group them into 3 buckets, but
That's fair.
I think limiting to 3 is hard. We're out on Alameda Point, and so the community out there around some really great food and drink that's evolving is amazing. Some really great options: Faction, Almanac, The Rake, Humble Sea. Grab a drink, grab a snack. There's also a really cool restaurant out there called Saltbreaker that we definitely love. Domenico's.
Very good.
For sandwich, amazing.
I do have to add that one thing doesn't come up necessarily with Domenico's all the time is they make one of the best cannolis I've had since I got to the West Coast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Really?
Because they do it right, which is they don't fill them until you ask for it.
Oh, that's so I am not. I'm revealing I am not a cannoli eater because I definitely like the sandwiches, but I will remember that.
Yeah, got to get the cannoli.
And then the last ones I would say are like Burma Superstar. Sorry. I love Burma. It's really good. So
fantastic. How can people best keep in touch with what you're up to?
Website, LinkedIn. We have a modest Instagram, but really I would say most of the news is either on the website or LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Gia Schneider from Natel Energy, thank you so much for spending time with us here on the Alameda Connection.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute joy. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Thanks again to Gia Schneider, co-founder and chief commercial officer of Natel Energy, for spending time with us this morning on the Alameda Connection. You can keep up with what's going on in Natel Energy by heading to their website, natelenergy.com. That's NATELENERGY.com. You can also follow them on Instagram. That Instagram handle is NATEL, the underscore symbol, and the word energy. Coming up next week on the Alameda Connection, it's the first time I've had a guest that spent more time behind a microphone than I have. It's Bay Area Radio Hall of Famer Stan Bunger. For decades, the morning voice of KCBS Radio. After his retirement, Stan still had some stories to tell. And that led to the publication of his 2024 book, Mornings with Madden. Drawing on years of his daily on-air conversations with the legendary football coach John Madden, Stan's book offers a rare insight into a side of an American media personality that most people outside of the Bay Area were completely unaware of. And we'll spend time talking about why Stan has called Alameda home for these many years. That's Stan Bunger next Sunday on the Alameda Connection. Looking forward to the rest of February, we've got Reka Saleh from nationally recognized barbecue restaurant Fixque Barbecue. Yes, the unassuming storefront here on Park Street has caught the attention of the nation with their Indonesian halal take on traditional Texas barbecue. After that, Elisa Rosera and John Brennan from the Social Justice Ministry at Christ Episcopal Church in Alameda. Christ Episcopal is the location of the seasonal Alameda Warming Shelter. Elisa, John, and I discuss the warming shelter, plus the other outreach programs providing meals, showers, and other services to Alameda's unhoused. After that, we'll raise a glass with Lance Winters and Dave Smith from St. George Distillery. An integral part of Alameda's Spirits Alley, St. George was one of America's first craft distilleries. We'll talk about the craft of distilling and their 30-year partnership with the folks at Sierra Nevada Brewing. That's all coming up February on the Alameda Connection. Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram. Just search Alameda Connection. If you've got an idea for a guest for a future episode of the Alameda Connection, send me an email. That's alamedaconnection@gmail.com. Thanks as always to the California Historical Radio Society for providing our recording location for our conversation with Gia Schneider. And thanks to Bill Hart for our theme music, Beachside Isle, from his album Watch the Sky. I'm Scott Piehler. I'll catch you next Sunday morning at 8 on KCSM HD2 for the latest episode of the Alameda Connection.